Lyn Garner is Chief Executive of the London Legacy Development Corporation, the LLDC, which is delivering the sustainable development of the area around the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. So, Lyn, can you start by giving me a sort of progress update? How are things getting on in developments like East Wick and Sweetwater, East Bank Cultural Project, as well as the UCL campus?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess, can't start without saying that, like everybody else across London and the UK, we've had to adapt really quickly to changing circumstances as we deal with COVID, and it has had an impact. I'll say a bit about that. And there continue to be challenges for us and our partners. But what has been really good is that LLDC has been able to remain resilient. We've been able to continue delivering on the Olympic promises in that regard through this year. Actually, we have a really capable and competent set of colleagues in the organisation. We're about 150 people or so. Some colleagues remain on the park for obvious reasons in terms of looking after the park and so on. Vast majority of us working from home, but working really well. And so directing development in new sites has continued. And indeed, development on the park has largely progressed with a few stoppages around East Bank and so on. So housing developments going quite well. This year, we've seen new families coming into the park. It's changing the nature of the place, families living on the edge of the park, and they've appreciated that this year in particular, I think. Housing targets, so back in the day, the MDC was set a housing target of 33,000 homes in the area. Just give you a flavour of how that's going. That target was due to be met in 2036. So to date, including the conversion of the Athletes Village, which, as you know, was done immediately after the Games, just over 10,000 have been delivered. 16,000 have planning permission, 16,000 more have planning permission, so that's considerable. And of those, just over 4,000 are currently under construction. So it gives you a sense of where we are today. The first of our neighbourhoods, so following the Athletes Village conversion, is called Chobham Manor. And that's progressing well. We're up to about phase 3. There are 4 phases altogether. There'll be 880 dwellings and they'll be completed by the end of 2022. It's a great development, actually. I really love it. It's won all sorts of awards, wide boulevards, very family orientated, 75% family units. And by that, I mean more than 3-bed, 3-bed plus. So properly family units right in the park near the velodrome. So we're really pleased with how that's come forward, actually. Also, Eastwick, we're progressing well here. We've just about starting to complete phase 1 of Eastwick. So that comprises 302 units. The private rented units were released recently and they are 50% occupied. Social rent and affordable units are being nominated to right now, and the residents will move in the new year. So, I was down there a few weeks ago, actually, before this latest lockdown. Fantastic new marketing suite. The joint venture there, which is Places for People and Balfour Beatty, have spent decent amounts of money on a great new marketing suite with a community space for local people and lovely cafe and so on. And I think it's, and it has to, that marketing suite has to stand the test of time, because we got 7 phases here. We're not due to complete the entire development into the 2030s. And for those remaining 6 phases, the reserve matter applications are due to come before us by the end of the year. So we're pleased with progress, albeit it's slightly delayed because the RMAs were expected in September and we've pushed it out to December. There are 3 remaining housing sites, Peter. They are Stratford Waterfront, Pudding Mill and Rick Roberts Way. And these are sites that we own. Altogether, there will be about 2,600 homes on those sites. Stratford Waterfront is the one adjacent to the new V&A Museum, and that's recently been launched into the market. We can talk a bit about that in a moment. And the other two sites, Pudding Mill Lane and Rick Roberts Way, are in the process of master planning, and they are likely to come forward for a delivery partner in 2022. So that gives you a flavour of that. And of course, because we've had a change in mayor and a change in policy, those remaining sites will be 50% affordable, albeit they're being delivered in a portfolio approach. So there's a bit of a mix coming forward depending which site we're looking at across that portfolio. I'll tell you a bit about East Bank and where we're up to there. It's a partnership, as you know, between LLDC and some world-renowned academic arts and cultural institutions. It does represent the biggest single investment in arts and culture, actually since the Great Exhibition in the 1850s, in one single place. So it's pretty impressive in that regard. There are two distinct sites. One is the UCL East site and phase one of UCL East, which is 50,000 square meters of academic space and some student accommodation, is on site and going up really quickly at the moment. And the Stratford Waterfront sites, where we've got Sadler's Wells BBC, UAL campus, and the V&A, indeed. Construction is progressing well. It's in a COVID secure way, obviously. There were some delays because we closed the site in March for about 9 weeks. But despite the challenges that COVID has brought, what's been really pleasing is that each of the partners remain completely committed to the project, as does the government and the GLA. There's considerable public funding going into this development. Well over £500 million is going in of taxpayers' money. And we do know that the arts and cultural industries are amongst the hardest hit by the pandemic. So this feels quite important because I think by the time we're opening East Bank between 2022 and 2024, we want this investment to play a significant role in London's recovery. We want to be able to signal huge positivity nationally and internationally through this development. It will bring new job opportunities, a few thousand job opportunities. It will generate a significant amount of benefit to the visitor economy. And of course, overall, it will see 10,000 students coming to the park, which I think will fundamentally change the nature of the area and really increase the vibrancy alongside those new residents. I just wanted to say about the East Bank partners and really give them credit because they're really suffering at this time, particularly the arts and cultural institutions. But despite that, they've worked very hard with local communities. So they continue to forge relationships with local organisations in advance of the building's opening. They offer skills, education and training opportunities. The idea here is that we're determined to try and make those connections locally in East London so that these buildings don't sort of arrive like alien beings and open their doors, and we don't really get local people engaged, which is tremendously important. A good example is our summer school, which attracted around 230 local young people. We do it every year with the partners where kids get involved in workshops and so on and thinking about their future careers. And this year we did it online. It was tremendously successful. So looking at an online element going forward, which will be great. And just last month in November, the BBC launched something called A Class of Your Own, which is a BBC design challenge. It will involve pupils aged 11 to 14 designing their own fictional performance space and a recording studio for the BBC. And that means they'll be rubbing shoulders with pop musicians, classical composers, and presenters and sound engineers. So it feels really important to get that socioeconomic thing right because it is what the LLD is supposed to be about. It's not just about building buildings, it's supposed to be about that mission of changing people's lives there. So critically important. Yeah, so that's it on the development side.
Thanks. So you got two development sites next to East Bank, and you've said that your approach to this development would be a bit different to previous neighbourhoods. Can you tell us what's different and why?
Yes, yeah. So these two sites are Stratford Waterfront itself, which is 600 homes adjacent to the new V&A Museum. That's a town centre site. It's 35% affordable housing in shared ownership. And the other one is Bridgewater Triangle, which is close to Pudding Mill Lane Station. It's also around 600 homes, more family orientated and 50% affordable. So mix of sites there, different sort of dynamics going on. Now, previously at LLDC, we've used standard development agreements to help us deliver our sites. We rely on land receipts in order to recoup value from the land in order to pay it back to the government, essentially. That's how the model, the long-term finance model works. So for Chobham Manor and for Eastwick and Sweetwater, they've been delivered through traditional development agreements, but with a land payment, which is set as a percentage of sales revenue. Now, there are clear benefits with this approach because we don't take risks associated with the development in that sense. But then neither does it give us much control. And so in looking historically around what we've done in the past, we've decided to review our approach. And this time we're seeking a joint venture partner to help us deliver these 1,200. So in the JV approach, I guess the reason why is we see it as inherently more flexible. We get a seat at the table in a time when there's bound to be constant change, and there has been a lot of change in the past, going back since 2007-8. So we've seen a lot of downward cycles with developers necessarily trying to look at a short-term interest, where we in the public sector can take a long-term interest. And so what we're trying to do is share the risk and the reward with the partner in the longer term, increase that influence, but critically work together to resolve problems and work together through policy changes that might arise over time, whether it comes from a new mayor or government policy changes. So that's our aim. The procurement was launched in October, so it's pretty hot off the press, and we're hoping to select next summer and get going.
So in terms of other development, the new Monnier Road Bridge connecting Fish Island and the park has recently been installed, and it's going to open sometime in 2021. I mean, this has been a subject of some debate in the area. Have you managed to accommodate local concerns on that front?
Well, we've done our best. These concerns started raising their heads around 2018. So this is a long-standing legacy commitment to deliver better connections between existing and new communities, connecting new people to the likes of Hackney Wick and Fish Island that are on the park, but critically connecting local residents into the park, into the new housing, the new schools. There are 4 new schools on the park, and the job opportunities that are coming there, as well as to the park itself. And you'll know yourself, because I know you know the area quite well, Peter, that it's quite fragmented with waterways, railway lines and so on, always was, and they were always big challenges. So there are hundreds actually of individual connections in the broader master plan that we are working through as part of the legacy project. And this particular bridge is also part of a wider strategy for Hackney Wick and Fish Island that's been well established in the local development plan. But of course, things do change over time. And as the areas become more developed, including the park itself, views of what was appropriate have changed over time. And in relation to the installation of this long-awaited bridge, a difference of opinion arose around it. And it all came to the fore, as I say, in 2018. On one side of the argument, small local businesses didn't want to see this development result in an increase in their rent. On the other side, there were isolated communities in Hackney Wick, such as those in the Trowbridge estate, who would really benefit from a better connection to the park. And what was also evident at the time of the consultation in 2018 was that residents and local businesses didn't want the bridge to be used as a rat run through Hackney Wick and Fish Island, because there's a lot of work been done to safeguard creative and artist communities in an area that's a mix of old and new, and has been carefully developed over time with the aim to keep those longer term institutions in Hackney Wick and Fish Island where at all possible. And so what we did was, in order to come to a bit of a compromise, we agreed through our board in 2018 that the bridge would only be accessible to pedestrians, to cyclists, and at a later date, when more homes are occupied at Eastwick and a case can be made, to buses. So there won't be general car access across that bridge. I mean, there are a number of benefits to the buses. Obviously reduce congestion in terms of car movements and so on, and bottlenecks in traffic. And there are also a number of completely traffic-free routes also in existence across the park and into Hackney Wick and Fish Island in other areas. So we're hoping that this will be a complementary piece to those elements. As you say, it's due to open in 2021. Probably closer to October now than initially envisaged. We initially envisaged it at the beginning of the year. And we do need to continue to engage with local communities and see what the impact is going forward. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier how people were enjoying the park, and as a result of COVID, we've seen a growing interest in open spaces and parks generally. And I guess you must have seen an increase in usage, but have you changed anything you do in the park to respond to the pandemic?
It's quite difficult to measure the change in usage because we get around 6 million visitors a year. But in those numbers, we count visitors to the venues. So in any year, we might have 1 million visitors to the stadium and 1 million visitors to the aquatic centre, you know, lots of kids learn to swim there and so on. So in counting what's been going on, we've been trying to use our Wi-Fi system. So we've had 1.5 million people visiting the park since the start of the first lockdown. We think that's probably quite a significant number and probably an increase, particularly in local people. Because if you think about the venues, the schools and the offices all having been closed, then that number is a sort of pure number, and it's only those who are logging onto the Wi-Fi. So it does give us a sense of what's going on. We did a little bit of light touch installing some COVID secure measures. Despite the venues being closed, we made sure there were toilets open, absolutely critical if people are coming on, especially if they can get takeaway drinks and so on, that they can use the facilities. So we did make sure the facilities were open and spent the money on cleaning toilets and so on and putting the security teams in place. Kept the security at the same level because we used it in the height of the summer when it was extremely busy, for people to be helped with social distancing guidance through the summer. People were having, picnics in the park and so on, which was great to see. We also managed to use the big screen on the London Stadium quite a lot. So whether that was health messages, social distancing messages, or we got involved in the launch of the pilot of the track and trace system for Newham, and we're able to promote that as well in terms of its usage. So they were the things that we did. I think what we've seen is that generally we'd spend quite a bit of our budget promoting Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park nationwide and on big significant events. What we've done is we've used the budget and repurposed it to focus on local people, making sure people know it's there, trying to pull them in during the pandemic. And I think that this business of security is quite important just at the moment. So we've switched it into making sure that when people are doing local exercise at either end of the day, when it's dark at the moment, that they're feeling safe in the park, because as you know, there isn't a great deal of natural surveillance in the park until all those homes and businesses are properly occupied. So making sure if you want to go for a run in the morning or in the evening, it feels safe feels quite important. So we've repurposed a bit of security there. It's been used quite well during second lockdown as well. We did a little bit of research. We're surrounded by flattered development. We suspect that a lot of people were using the park for their daily exercise. So in the summer, in June, we tested this a little bit, and we found that 70% of respondents were saying they considered the park to be at the heart of their community, an important asset for London during lockdown, but critically a local asset, and somewhere that they could come that had a positive impact on their physical and mental health. And so that's been really important, actually. It's been a real boost to our team in keeping the whole thing at the right sort of quality level. You know, we still maintain the gardens at that Olympic level, and it looked splendid in the summer, which was great.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Lyn. And it's great to see the long-term plan to bring greater green space to the area is really paying dividends during COVID. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Peter. It's lovely to see you.